Chapter 10. Mystical Experiences of a Neophyte. 1. One night of 1966, while utilizing one of the practices of astral projection, I managed to leave my body consciously. Then I felt a very special freedom, an indescribable joy. Thus, like a bird, I flew to another planet, which was unknown to me, but very much like the planet Earth, since I saw enormous green forests filled with pines and a log cabin within which I saw some people waving their hands aloft to get my attention. I descended and with great surprise found that the Master Samael Aun Weor was there with some relatives and some of his disciples who greeted me with a very warm hug and a very special joy that I cannot describe. Thereafter the Master invited me to walk in the forest until we arrived at a stone bridge where he explained that this planet was the moon of the former round when it had inhabitants, animals, and vegetation. So that was the ancient Earth moon, or Mother Earth moon. He showed me rivers, mountains, and great seas. Could you explain to me how it is possible to visit another planet back in time, like in that remote epoch? Samael Aun Weor. Now you see, respectable gentlemen, what a conscious projection is. Through it, the soul can transport itself to other planets and know many mysteries. Listen, you were actually projected as soul spirit to that satellite, or whatever you want to call it, that shines in the starry nights. Certainly you found my spirit there at that mentioned bridge. However, it is obvious that what you saw, namely the bridge, the river, the vegetation, etc., corresponds to an extremely ancient past because presently the moon is a corpse. It is good for you to know that the worlds, the people, the plants, and the animals are born, grow, age, and die. So in name of truth, I must tell you that the moon is now a corpse. Nonetheless, such a satellite had life in abundance throughout its childhood, its youth, its maturity, but it aged and finally died. The soul can see not only the future and the present, but also the past. Thus, what you saw exactly corresponds to that ancient time in which the moon had mighty rivers, deep seas, exuberant vegetation, volcanoes in eruption, vegetal, animal, and human life. I want you to know that the Selenites existed since the moon had 7 human root races through successive historical periods. The first root races were giants, and the last ones Lilliputines, in other words, pygmies. So we could classify the last human families who lived on the moon as human ants. Do not be surprised by what I am stating to you, since this is what happens on every planet. The first root races are giant, and the last, extremely small. Congratulations for having remembered what you saw and heard on the moon. 2. In the month of July 1969, Master Samael Aun Weor, his family, a friend, another disciple, and this humble servant had the opportunity to visit a town of the state of Hidalgo. We departed in a car during a very rainy and slightly cold afternoon with the purpose of studying an archaeological zone. However, we thought it was not going to be possible to visit such a place since a strong rain was pouring along the highway and there was very little visibility. We traversed almost all of the way and when arriving saw with surprise how the sky of the town we were heading towards was becoming very clear while black clouds were gathered around it. Thus, we could practically visit the archaeological zone in its entirety. Then I noticed that the Master Samael made some instantaneous concentrations and afterwards commented to his wife that permission had been given. Then he asked me if I noticed the phenomenon that took place. My answer was affirmative, since it was obvious that he had requested the end of the rain. After our visit, he indicated for us to go into the car, and instantaneously the rain began to pour. Could you tell me how this miracle was possible? Samael Aun Weor. Is it good for you to know that the 4 elements, fire, air, water, and earth, are densely populated by the elemental creatures of nature? Well then, those are the elementals. They are called elementals because they live in the elements. The pygmies, for example, live within rocks of the earth. The salamanders live in the fire, the sylphs in the air, the clouds, and the nereids in the water. Skeptical people do not accept any of this, but I believe that you are a person who has faith, And this is why I will explain and answer your question with great pleasure. By means of certain secret formulas, my own spirit gave orders to the sylphs who live in the clouds for them to move those clouds away. Nevertheless, you must not ignore that the waters are controlled by the undines. By propelling special psychic currents, the sylphs can take or move the clouds away from some place, and thereby also move the undines of the waters. Thus, the rain can be momentarily moved away. However, we the initiates only perform this in very special cases, since otherwise disorder in nature would result. When a Gnosis initiate performs a miracle like that, he always does it with the permission of superior beings. The miracle that you witnessed was necessary because it was necessary for us to study some monoliths from Tula, which, by the way, were quite remarkable. 3. In a practice in which I wanted to remember my past lives, such as you have taught us, I had the following experiences. I saw myself in the pyramids of Teotihuacan at the time of the Aztecs. Thus, where the citadel is located, there was a great multitude that shouted great acclamations and vociferations, since along the Avenue of the Dead were reunited people of the town, soldiers and politicians, richly adorned with plumes, bracelets, sandals, and ornaments of gold and jewelry. Along the avenue, I, along with several prisoners tied by their hands and necks, surrounded by several soldiers dressed as tiger and eagle knights, walked towards the foot of the Pyramid of the Sun, where a great bonfire was burning, and when arriving at the platform, they placed us in a line. A priest made a signal, and everybody became silent. Then they began to sound the chirimias and teponastlis. Later came maidens dancing with indescribable flamboyance. When the dances concluded, 12 elders came who performed a type of court-martial. Then they judged us. Thereafter they blindfolded us and forced us to ascend the steps of the pyramid. Along the way, some slipped and fell, since we listened to the noise and the shouts of pain. I remember that I felt the steps to be very narrow, since scarcely half of my foot fit there. Then there were some prayers, invocations, and offerings when arriving at the superior platform, where finally we were sacrificed to the god Huitzilopochtli. Could explain to me what happened. Is that a reincarnation or a return? Samael Aunweor. With the longing of remembering your past lives, while in meditation, you became a little drowsy and then your soul escaped from your body of bones and flesh. Thereafter, the different scenes and memories of the past came to you. I invite you to comprehend that indeed you were an Aztec citizen, an inhabitant of ancient Mexico. Obviously, you saw how the Aztecs judged their many delinquents and how later they sacrificed them to the gods. Therefore, not all of those who were immolated at the altar of human sacrifices were innocent people. Human sacrifices existed in the pre-Columbian Mexico.